So according to modern theories of biology and evolution, as we've heard many times before, it is the fittest who survive. It is those who are best adapted and integrated into their environments and who have been most conditioned by the world or reality or whatever we want to call it, and therefore best conform to what is true and to what is real. And on the other side of this equation, it is those who are the most incompatible with the world or with reality who struggle to survive. They are, according to this theory, the weakest. And the surest sign of vitality and strength is the ability to successfully reproduce, again according to this theory. Those who reproduce the most are those whose traits will survive and become dominant within the gene pool of a species. Furthermore, and this is a point that I think gets overlooked in this conversation, the adaptations that species have are evidence of something that is external to them. For example, a bird with like a long beak, like a hummingbird, directs our attention to something external to it in the real world, like nectar that is hidden in small and hard to reach places, which can only then be retrieved by a long, narrow beak. A giraffe's long neck brings our attention to the kinds of vegetation which makes them uniquely adapted for the kinds of environments that they live in. The blubber of a seal points to the extremely cold climate and the conditions that they inhabit. And you might even argue that if human beings are the most highly evolved organism, if we are the most capable of survival, the most able to adapt and overcome our adversities, well, what is it that's unique about us is our rational ability, which would point to something of intelligibility or a current of reason which exists within the universe. Again, this all tells us something not just about the organism who lives, survives, and reproduces, but about the nature of reality that the organism inhabits. So then what do we make of the fact that the samples and demographics of human beings that are most invigorated by their existence, most enthusiastic about being alive, and most enthusiastic about reproducing are religious people? It's Muslims, Christians, Orthodox Jews, and even pious pagans who are most likely to successfully traverse the obstacles between them and the goal of pairing off with someone who will actually return their affections, and then persevere through all the challenges of a monogamous relationship long enough in order to reproduce and actually be happy doing so. Several studies have confirmed that religious couples are far more happy and satisfied in their physical intimacy, they are far more likely to reproduce, and that religious adherence, especially to the Christian religion, protects against suicidal ideation and serious attempts. My dog doesn't need that. He's just ready to go when he wakes up. He doesn't ask himself if the benefits outweigh the costs. He just goes. We, however, are constantly reflecting on such deliberations, both big and small. For an atheist whose account of their own existence entails that random accidents and chance and chaos perpetuated by an indifferent universe somehow produced organization and order and the appearance of design, and that through the replication of countless collisions of cause and effect somehow produce a world like ours that is so fine-tuned that it can produce and sustain complex life, that if a single variable were off by the slightest fraction of a fraction, none of this would exist. If that's what you believe about why you exist, then what is your reason for carrying on? Why bother? Why bother mustering up a second wind when adversity surrounds you? Why bother getting back up when the chips are down? If all your hope is in this life alone, then hope is an utterly irrational delusion. The future is tragic any way you look at it, dispelling any notion of a rational hope. If you don't succeed, the future sucks. If you do succeed, the future only means fighting a losing battle against the loss of everything that you've gained. Which is no wonder why, as secularism has become more pervasive and influential in places like Europe and North America and the developed world, our ability to reproduce has dramatically declined below replacement levels. Those who are most committed to a secular vision of the world are way less likely to pair off and to make the kinds of grand and ambitious commitments that are necessary to risk marrying someone, and to make all the sacrifices that are necessary to reproduce and to raise those offspring so that they can persevere in the enterprise of your genetic succession. And atheists are much more likely to succumb to the temptation to premature death and to suicide when their adversities beliefs become too great to bear. Their reasons for carrying on are much harder to find based on this assumption that we are merely physical beings. But because we are rational, we do need reasons to carry on, especially when things become difficult. The religious view of our existence actually provides those reasons and motivations. In a sense, those who are religious are best adapted to subsist in the real world that we find ourselves in. And like all the other adaptations that we observe in the natural world, which point to something outside of the organism that is so adapted, I would argue that what makes us stronger for life to get up and embrace each day with hope and with gratitude, necessary ingredients for the flourishing of humanity, this points to the reality of something outside of ourselves, which is that God actually truly does exist, and that by worshiping Him, we are more fit to live and to reproduce. Just like the tall tree exists in relation to the giraffe and shapes and forms it, just like the cold climate exists in relation to the seal and shapes and forms it. I think it also bears recognizing the fact that the vast majority of people alive today and who have lived throughout the scope of human history have had an innate trust and belief that there is more to this life than can be explained through mere material observation, that we have a soul, that God exists, that there is an afterlife, that there are spiritual dimensions to reality, and that truth, goodness, and beauty are transcendentals. When you zoom out to that kind of sample size to inquire about and observe the human species, it is only a tiny minority who have embraced the alternative view that there is nothing more than what we can see and taste and touch and smell. And it is precisely that minority who is falling dramatically short of what Darwinian theorists mean by the fittest to survive. Hey, thanks for watching that. If you made it this far, it's either because you fell asleep or because you really like me. And if it's the latter, I feel okay asking if you would consider helping me out by subscribing, liking, sharing, and if you really like me, consider supporting my channel by joining the reinforcements, where you can get opportunities to interact with me and others personally. You can sign up at brianholdsworth.ca. And if you're looking to buy or move, consider using Real Estate for Life. They are a network of real estate agents that will share your pro-life and pro-family beliefs, which are pretty important when it comes to making a big decision like finding a house. You can find them at realestateforlife.com.